She said, "What?" I gasped, clutching the napkin. 2 words. "Not welcome," in Grandma June's handwriting, at my cousin Tiffany's party, in front of everyone. But that wasn't the worst part. Tiffany grinned, leaned in, and whispered, "She finally sees you for what you are." Laughter, champagne, my name already spinning through the room like a punchline. And Grandma? She just sat there, silent, watching. I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked straight into the cold night, fists clenched. But here's what Tiffany didn't know. Grandma's care? I handled every dollar, every signature, every pill, for years, and I kept everything. That night, she tried to erase me. But what came next? Let's just say, she handed me the match, and I let her light it. Family's a funny thing, isn't it? Most days it wraps around you like an old quilt, familiar and warm. But sometimes, well, sometimes, it can squeeze the breath right out of you. I learned that lesson the hard way, but let me back up a bit and tell you how it all started. I was 45 when everything fell apart, but this story really begins 28 years earlier when my mom passed away. I was just 17 then, barely old enough to understand grief, let alone handle it. But Grandma June, she stepped in like she'd been preparing for it her whole life. You know that feeling when you walk into someone's house and just know you're home? That was Grandma June's place for me. Every morning, that soft yellow kitchen light would flicker on at exactly 5:30 a.m. I can still hear the coffee maker's gentle gurgle, still smell that mix of fresh brew and the lingering scent of her butter cookies from the night before. The medicine bottles lined up on the counter like little soldiers, that came later, but somehow they became just as much a part of the rhythm of the place as everything else. The porch was our special spot. That old swing would creak just so, like it was singing along with the crickets. We'd sit out there most evenings, Grandma June and me, watching the sun paint the sky while she told stories about when Mom was young. Those moments, they're carved into my heart deeper than any inheritance could ever be. Now, my cousins Tiffany and Blake, they were different story altogether. Tiffany especially had this way of smiling that never quite reached her eyes, like she was keeping score behind those perfect teeth of hers. Blake mostly followed her lead, quiet-like, but you could see the same entitled gleam in his expression. They'd sweep in every few months, all designer clothes and big plans, while I was there every day, making sure Grandma had her medication sorted and her bills paid on. Time. You might think I'd have gotten bitter about it, watching them coast through life on Grandma's generosity while I worked double shifts at the hospital just to make ends meet. But that's not how Grandma June raised me. "We do what's right," she'd always say, "not what's easy." So I kept every receipt, maintained detailed logs of every doctor's visit, and tracked every change in her medication. Not because I had to, but because that's what you do when you love someone. You pay attention to the details. When Grandma's health started slipping, those little habits became even more important. I could tell you exactly when she started forgetting her morning pills. Tuesdays were always worst. Or which days her arthritis made it hard to sign checks. I knew her routines better than I knew my own. While Tiffany and Blake were posting photos from their latest vacation, I was organizing pill boxes and scheduling doctor's appointments. You see, I'd learned something valuable over all those years. Patterns tell stories. Every bank statement, every prescription refill date, every small change in routine, they're like breadcrumbs leading to the truth. I kept everything organized in those expandable folders Grandma loved so much, each document carefully dated and filed away. Not because I thought I'd need them someday, but because order was its own kind of comfort. Looking back now, I realize those quiet years of watching and waiting weren't just about taking care of Grandma. They were preparing me for something I never saw coming. Every skill I'd picked up, every detail I'd noticed, every pattern I'd tracked, they were pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know I was solving. The thing about life is, it teaches you what you need to know long before you need to know it. All those years of keeping records, of noticing the small shifts in Grandma's handwriting, of tracking the ebb and flow of her good days and bad. They were like training for a fight I didn't know was coming. A fight that would start with a party invitation I almost turned down, and a smile that held more poison than promise. The invitation sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I could bring myself to RSVP. You know that feeling when something looks perfectly innocent, but your gut's screaming warnings? That's exactly what that cream-colored card did to me. Tiffany's swirling handwriting promised a special family gathering at the lake house, complete with dinner and announcements. I nearly called to make up an excuse. After all, I'd spent enough years watching Tiffany work a room, throwing those calculated smiles around like confetti while she played the devoted granddaughter. Meanwhile, I was the one organizing Grandma June's medications into those little plastic organizers every Sunday night, making sure she took the right pills at the right times. I was the one who noticed when her coffee started going cold because she'd forget to drink it, who knew exactly how to adjust her walker so it wouldn't catch on the living room rug. The memory of that rug hit me then, the way Grandma would smooth it with her foot every time she passed, even after her balance got shaky. Some habits just stick with you, I guess, just like the way I couldn't say no when family called, even when every instinct told me to stay home. So there I was, pulling up to the lake house on a Friday evening in early October. The old place looked like something out of a magazine spread, windows glowing golden, fairy lights strung across the porch railings, and music drifting out into the cool air. You could almost forget it was the same place where I used to help Grandma hang sheets on the line every summer, back when the paint was peeling and the screen door had that rusty squeak. Inside was even worse, or better, depending on how you look at it. Tiffany had transformed the familiar space into what felt like a Hallmark movie set. Crystal glasses caught the light just so, flowers arranged with professional precision, and everywhere I looked, relatives mingled in their carefully chosen outfits, laughing at just the right volume. "There she is!" Tiffany's voice carried across the room like a director's cue. She stood near the fireplace in a sequin top that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Blake hovered nearby, playing his usual role as her silent backup, nursing what I'm sure wasn't his first drink of the evening. I did a quick scan of the room, looking for the one face that mattered. When I spotted Grandma June in her wheelchair by the window, something felt off. She was dressed up nice enough, but her hands were too still in her lap, her usual warm smile nowhere to be seen. Usually, she'd be right in the thick of things, telling stories about the lake house's early days or fussing over whether everyone had enough to eat. "Grandma," I started toward her, already reaching for her shoulder, our usual greeting. But Tiffany somehow materialized between us, smooth as silk and twice as slippery. "Oh, Megan, wait just a second." Her smile was bright enough to blind. "I have something special for you first." My stomach dropped as she held out a carefully folded napkin, crisp and white against her manicured nails. The room seemed to get quieter, though the music played on. I could feel eyes on us, quick glances trying to look casual and failing. "Go ahead," Tiffany urged, her perfect teeth showing in what anyone else might have mistaken for warmth. "Open it." The napkin felt stiff in my hands, like it was starched with something besides fabric softener, maybe malice. As I stood there, not yet unfolding it, I caught Blake watching from his post by the fireplace. The slight lift at the corner of his mouth told me everything I needed to know about what was coming. I unfolded that napkin, like I'd done 1,000 times before at Grandma June's kitchen table. You know those moments when your fingers already know something's wrong before your brain catches up? That's how it felt. The paper was too crisp, too formal. Nothing like the soft squares we used to write grocery lists on during Sunday coffee. 2 words, just 2 words in Grandma's shaky handwriting. "Not welcome." My throat closed up so fast I nearly choked. The room kept moving, glasses clinking, that fake little jazz playlist Tiffany always used at her parties, but everything felt underwater. Through the blur, I could see faces turning toward me, trying to look busy, but watching. Always watching. The napkin crumpled in my fist. I looked at Grandma June, searching for, hell, I don't know what I was searching for. A sign that this was some cruel joke? The woman who'd taught me how to make her secret recipe, meatloaf, who'd sat up with me through every teenage heartbreak, just sat there. Her hands folded in her lap, eyes down, shoulders curved like she was trying to disappear into that wheelchair. You ever have a moment when your whole world tilts sideways and suddenly you're not sure which way is up anymore? That's what her silence felt like, a betrayal worse than the words on that napkin. Someone laughed, that high, theatrical laugh Tiffany uses when she wants attention. My cheeks burned. I could feel my pulse in my temples, that heavy thud of humiliation turning to anger, then back to humiliation again. The room started closing in, walls getting too tight, air too thin. I didn't run. I want to make that clear. I walked, steady as I could manage, right out to that wide wooden porch where Grandma and I used to shell peas in the summer. The night air hit my face like a slap, and that's when the tears started. Not the pretty kind they show in movies, the ugly choking kind that make your whole body shake. Ms. Delaney? Ellen's voice was barely above a whisper. I hadn't even heard her follow me out. She glanced over her shoulder at the French doors, then moved closer. There's something you need to know. I tried to wave her off. I couldn't handle one more thing, not right then. But she caught my arm. Her fingers dug in just enough to tell me this wasn't casual concern. They've been changing papers behind your back, she said, each word careful and clear. Legal papers. I've seen them coming and going with documents when they think no one's paying attention. The porch rail was the only thing holding me up at that point. Papers. Legal papers. The pieces started clicking together like a lock tumbling open. The way they'd been blocking my usual visits, the whispered conversations that stopped when I walked in. Those family meetings I was never invited to. How long? My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Months, maybe longer. Ellen's eyes were full of apology. I should have said something sooner, but... Tiffany's laugh cut through the night again, sharp as broken glass. I turned toward the doors, my hands shaking with something darker than hurt now. Ellen caught my sleeve. Don't, she warned. Not yet. Not until we know exactly what they've done. She was right. Of course she was right. But standing there, listening to them celebrate whatever they'd pulled off. Remember that feeling when you were a kid and some bully made you look stupid in front of the whole class? Take that feeling and multiply it by about 1,000. That's what was churning in my stomach. This wasn't just some party gone wrong. This was calculated. This was Tiffany and Blake orchestrating a public execution of whatever place I thought I had in this family. And from the sound of those laughs drifting through the walls, they were damn proud of their work. I stood there gripping that porch rail, caught between the need to scream and the cold certainty that screaming was exactly what they wanted. Through the window, I could see Grandma June's reflection in the glass, still silent, still small, still a stranger in my world. The napkin trembled in my hand, those two brutal words swimming before my eyes. My legs carried me toward Tiffany before my brain could catch up. She stood near the fireplace, champagne flute dangling from manicured fingers, holding court like this was her coronation. What's this supposed to mean? I thrust the napkin at her, keeping my voice low but steady. A few heads turned our way. Perfect. I wanted witnesses. Tiffany's smile widened, red lips curling at the corners. Oh, honey, exactly what it says. She took a deliberate sip, eyes gleaming over the rim of her glass. Grandma June's been reconsidering things lately. Family dynamics, inheritance matters. Her voice dripped false sympathy. You understand. My throat constricted. After everything I've done, the doctor's appointments, the medications, the bills, playing nurse doesn't make you family. Tiffany's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. You always were the charity case, weren't you? Poor little Megan, taken in after her mom died. She glanced at the gathered relatives, inviting them to share her amusement. Some of us were actually born into this family. Blake materialized at her shoulder, arms crossed, jaw set. the muscle bound backup to her performance. You know those moments when your whole world tilts sideways? When you realize the story you've been living isn't the one everyone else has been reading? This was mine. Does Grandma June know what you're doing? I demanded, hands clenched to stop their shaking. No? Tiffany's eyebrows arched. It was her idea. Show her, Blake. He produced a folded document from his jacket pocket. Legal paper, fresh creases. New will, he said flatly. All properly signed and witnessed. The room spun slightly. I sought out Grandma June across the crowd, finding her still in that wheelchair by the window. Her eyes met mine for just a moment, and what I saw there stopped my heart. Confusion, fear, a flicker of recognition quickly doused. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. This isn't over, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Actually, it is. Tiffany's smile never wavered. You might want to clear out your little caretaker station in Grandma's spare room. We'll be handling things from now on. I could have screamed. Could have grabbed that champagne flute and thrown it. Could have made the scene they were probably hoping for, the final proof that I didn't belong. But I saw Grandma June's hands trembling in her lap, and I knew any explosion would hurt her most. Instead, I straightened my spine. Thank you for making everything so clear. I turned away from Tiffany's triumphant smirk, Ellen's earlier warning, ringing in my ears. They've been changing papers behind your back. The night air hit my face like a slap as I pushed through the front door. Gravel crunched under my feet as I made my way down the dark driveway, each step carrying me further from the warmth and laughter still spilling from the windows. My car sat waiting, a familiar shadow against all this strangeness. Standing there in the dark, I felt something shift inside me, like a key turning in a lock. They thought they'd written me out of the story? Fine, but I'd been keeping Grandma June's records for years. I knew every doctor's signature, every bank statement, every change in her medications. If they'd been rewriting history, they'd left a trail. I pressed my hand against my car's cold metal, steadying myself. You want to play games? I whispered to the night air. Let's play. The lake house glowed behind me, a picture-perfect family gathering that hid poison at its heart. But I'd learned something tonight. Tiffany's kind of cruelty comes with cockiness, and cockiness leaves fingerprints. My keys felt heavy in my palm as I unlocked my car door. Someone had tried to erase my place in this family with a few strokes of a pen. The question now was, what else had they rewritten while no one was watching? I drove home in a daze that night, barely registering the familiar turns. My hands kept shaking on the steering wheel, and I couldn't stop seeing Grandma June's eyes, confused, distant, almost afraid. Or maybe that's what I needed to believe. The alternative was worse, that she'd chosen this. You know that feeling when your mind won't shut off, like it's stuck on one of those awful playground merry-go-rounds? That was me at 2 a.m., sitting cross-legged on my living room floor with every light blazing. I'd pulled out the accordion file where I kept all of Grandma's paperwork, my security blanket since taking over her care, bills, receipts, bank statements. I'd saved everything. Get it together, Megan, I muttered, spreading papers across the carpet. Organization was my superpower, my way of staying sane when things got messy. The familiar rustle of sorting papers brought back afternoons at Grandma's kitchen table, teaching her my system while she insisted on making me endless cups of tea. But as I started really looking at the documents, things weren't adding up. Literally. There were withdrawals that didn't match any of our usual expenses. $500 here, $200 there. Dates that made no sense, like when Grandma was in the hospital for her hip but somehow visited the bank. My stomach clenched. I grabbed my phone and called Ellen, not caring about the hour. She answered on the second ring. I knew you'd be up, she said softly. Finding anything? Things look wrong. My voice cracked. There are withdrawals I never authorized, Ellen. Signatures that, I don't know, they look like hers, but listen carefully, Ellen cut in. They've been working on this for months. Tiffany's been telling everyone you've been stealing jewelry, that you're trying to force June into a nursing home. The room tilted. What? That's insane. I'm the one who... I know, but they're moving fast now. Your Aunt Martha called June yesterday, all concerned about reports she'd heard. My hands went cold. I'd left 3 messages for Aunt Martha just hours ago, and she hadn't returned a single one. They're really doing this, I whispered. They are. And if you want to fight back, you need to be smart. Document everything, but don't confront them yet. June needs to be protected first. I looked at the papers scattered around me. Bank statements, medical bills, pharmacy receipts. What had seemed like tedious paperwork now felt like evidence. These signatures, I said slowly. Some of them. They're too perfect, like someone traced them. Keep digging, Ellen urged, but carefully. They're watching for any excuse to paint you as the problem. After we hung up, I started making piles. Definite problems, possible issues, and things that needed verification. My eyes burned, but I couldn't stop. The more I looked, the more I found, little discrepancies that had slipped past me while I was focused on Grandma's daily care. Around 4 a.m., I made a to-do list for the morning. Verify account access, check signature cards at the bank, pull every statement from the past year. Basic steps, because basics were all I could handle right now. I stared at the stacks of paper surrounding me, seeing them differently. Every altered signature was a fingerprint. Every suspicious withdrawal was a footprint. Together, they were telling a story, one that made my chest ache but my mind sharpen. That's the thing about paper trails. They don't care about fancy parties or family politics. They just wait quietly until someone bothers to read them properly. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grandma June's confused expression and Tiffany's triumphant smirk playing on repeat like some twisted home movie. You know that feeling when something's so wrong it makes your skin crawl? That's what kept me up. Around 4 a.m, I gave up on sleep and spread everything across my kitchen table. Care invoices, bank statements, all the paperwork I'd been keeping track of for years. Ever since I started helping Grandma with her finances, I'd developed this habit of holding on to every scrap of paper. Back then, it was just about being thorough. Now, those papers were my lifeline. The morning sun was creeping through my blinds when patterns started jumping out at me. Little things at first, withdrawal amounts that didn't match any of Grandma's regular expenses, dates that didn't line up with her usual bill-paying schedule. Remember how your mom used to say the devil's in the details? Well, these details were screaming at me. I grabbed my phone and called Ellen. Have you noticed anything odd about Grandma's spending lately? I was wondering when you'd ask, Ellen said, her voice low like she was trying not to be overheard. Her hands shake so bad now she can barely hold a pen. But somehow there are all these new signatures on withdrawal slips. My stomach dropped. I'd been staring at those signatures for hours, trying to figure out why they looked off. Some were shaky, yeah, but others were too perfect, like someone trying too hard to copy Grandma's wobble. How long has the tremor been bad? I asked, spreading out 3 months' worth of bank statements. At least since spring, Ellen replied. She can't even sign her birthday cards anymore. That's why... She hesitated. Why what, Ellen? That's why Tiffany's pushing for this new guardianship thing. She's planning to announce it at your grandmother's birthday party next month, making a big show of it, like she's doing everyone a favor. I nearly dropped the phone. A birthday party announcement? Classic Tiffany, turning a power grab into a photo op. The date hit me like a punch to the gut. 3 weeks. That's all I had to prove what they were doing. They're going to trap her, I said, more to myself than Ellen. Once they get guardianship, they'll have control of everything, Ellen finished. Money, medical decisions, where she lives, all of it. My hands were shaking now as I laid out the evidence. 5 suspicious withdrawals in the past month alone, each one signed with what looked like Grandma's signature, but felt wrong in my bones. The amounts were clever, never too big to raise immediate red flags, but adding up to thousands. You ever have one of those moments where fear and fury collide? Where you're terrified of what might happen, but so angry you can barely think straight? That's where I was, watching the morning light creep across those damning papers. I checked my calendar, circling Grandma's birthday in red. The date seemed to pulse on the page, each day between now and then feeling like a ticking bomb. This wasn't just about cutting me out anymore. This was about stealing my grandmother's voice, her choices, her whole life. Ellen's voice brought me back. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the growing pile of evidence and thought about Grandma June's eyes at the party, confused, afraid, but still there, still fighting behind that silence they'd forced on her. "First," I said, "I'm going to document everything, every withdrawal, every signature, every date that doesn't add up. Then I'm going to figure out how deep this goes." "You've got 3 weeks," Ellen reminded me. "They're not going to make it easy." 3 weeks, 21 days, to unravel what looked like months of careful plotting. The sunlight hit the signature lines on those withdrawal slips, making the ink shine like fresh bruises. My grandmother's birthday, always a day for celebration, now loomed ahead like an execution date. I pulled out a fresh notebook and started writing, each entry another piece of ammunition. The clock on my kitchen wall seemed to tick louder with every passing second, like it was counting down to something bigger than all of us. Tiffany thought she had it all planned out, but she'd forgotten one thing. I'm my grandmother's granddaughter, and neither of us gives up without a fight. I spent the next 3 days organizing papers like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. Ever try to prove you're honest after someone's already decided you're not? Let me tell you, it's like trying to nail jelly to a wall while wearing boxing gloves. I created the system, color-coding everything. Blue folders for regular bills, red for the weird withdrawals, yellow for anything with Grandma's signature. The coffee table in my living room looked like an accountant's fever dream. You know that feeling when you're putting together a jigsaw puzzle and suddenly pieces start clicking? That's how it felt when I lined up those bank statements. "Look at this," I said to Ellen over the phone, tapping my pen against a statement. 3 withdrawals in 1 week, all exactly $20,500. Grandma never touched that account without telling me, not in 7 years. Those dates? Ellen paused. Those were days Tiffany visited alone. My stomach did that thing where it feels like you've missed a step going downstairs. I need copies of everything. If they can change, Grandma's will, they can make these disappear too. I was halfway through scanning documents when my online banking app logged me out. No big deal, I thought, until my password wouldn't work, or my security questions, or anything. The call to the bank felt like a slap in slow motion. "I'm sorry, Ms. Delaney, but you've been removed as an authorized user on all accounts." Just like that, poof. 7 years of managing Grandma's finances, gone in the time it takes to check a box on a form. Then my Aunt Martha called, first time in weeks, and I nearly dropped my phone rushing to answer. "Megan," she said, voice tight, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course, what? Did you take your grandmother's sapphire pendant?" The room tilted sideways. "What? No. Why would you?" "Tiffany said it's missing, and you were the last one." "Martha, I haven't even been allowed to see Grandma. When exactly am I supposed to have—" Click. My phone buzzed with texts from cousins I hadn't heard from in months, each one a variation on the same theme. "How could you? And we trusted you and Grandma's heartbroken." Ellen found me sitting in the dark, staring at my phone. "They're trying to make you crack," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "Don't give them the satisfaction. I've sent 14 messages explaining that I never took anything. Nobody's even reading them." I showed her my phone. All those messages marked delivered, but never seen. Of course they're not. They don't want the truth. They want you to look unstable. Ellen picked up one of my meticulously organized folders. "This is what matters. Keep building the paper trail." But my hands were shaking. Without account access, I can't even prove I paid for Grandma's medications last month. They could say I was stealing that money too. That's exactly what they want you thinking about instead of this. She tapped the folder of irregular withdrawals. Stay focused. I watched my text messages pile up, unread. Watched family members who'd eaten at my table post vague, sad face emojis about betrayal and family trust. Watched Tiffany leave little hearts on every single one. She's enjoying this, I whispered. She wants you to lose your temper, Ellen said. One public meltdown, one angry voicemail, and she'll have exactly what she needs. I stared at the scattered papers, my careful system suddenly feeling pathetically small against Tiffany's machinery. If she can lock me out of the accounts this easily? My throat closed around the words. What's stopping her from locking me away from Grandma completely? I reached for my phone again. The next morning, thumb hovering over Aunt Sarah's number. You know that moment when you're about to do something that'll probably hurt, but you do it anyway? Yeah, that was me. It rang 7 times before going to voicemail, just like yesterday and the day before. Hey, Aunt Sarah, it's Megan again. I really need to talk to you about what's happening with Grandma June. Please call. The automated voice cut me off. Message too long. I let my phone drop onto the kitchen counter, where it landed next to yesterday's mail. All bills, no responses from the family emails I'd sent trying to explain my side. You ever notice how silence can feel heavier than noise? The kind that settles on your shoulders like wet cement? Ellen called while I was making coffee. How are you holding up? About as well as you'd expect. I watched the coffee drip, remembering all those early mornings making Grandma June's favorite blend. Nobody's talking to me. Tiffany's got them all convinced I'm some kind of... I know, Ellen cut in. And it gets worse. I heard what she told your grandmother yesterday. My hand froze on the coffee pot. What did she say? She told June you were threatening to put her in a nursing home, that you said it was too much work keeping her at home. The mug slipped from my fingers, hitting the counter with a crack. Coffee splashed everywhere, but I barely noticed. She what? June was really upset. I tried to tell her it wasn't true, but... I grabbed my keys without even cleaning up the spill. 20 minutes later, I was pulling into Grandma June's driveway, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The maple tree she'd planted when I was 10 threw dappled shadows across the windshield. The same tree where we used to hang wind chimes that tinkled like fairy bells on summer evenings. Tiffany's car was already there. Of course it was. I knocked anyway. Tiffany answered with that same poisonous smile from the party. June doesn't want to see you right now. She's very distressed about your plans for her future. Let me talk to her, please. The please tasted like acid, but I'd have begged on my knees if it meant getting past that door. She said no. Tiffany's voice dripped with fake sympathy. Maybe if you'd thought about her feelings before threatening to ship her off. From inside, I heard Grandma June's quiet voice. Tell her to go. Those 4 words gutted me worse than anything at the party. This wasn't just about money or legal papers anymore. Tiffany had stolen my grandmother's trust. The one person who'd always believed in me now thought I'd betrayed her. I drove home in a fog, pulled into my garage, and just sat. There with the engine off, the manila folder of bank statements on my passenger seat seemed to mock me. What was the point of all this evidence if I'd already lost what mattered most? I dragged myself inside and collapsed onto my couch, staring at the ceiling. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made me fight and replaced it with lead. Maybe this was what Tiffany wanted, to wear me down until I gave up. My phone buzzed. Ellen, don't you dare quit, she said before I could even speak. Truth isn't about speed, it's about timing. We keep gathering proof. We wait for the right moment. She won't even see me, Ellen, my voice cracked. Grandma thinks She thinks what they want her to think, for now. But lies have expiration dates, Megan. Truth doesn't. I looked at the stack of paperwork on my coffee table, hands trembling as I reached for it. The numbers swam before my eyes as one terrible question echoed in my mind. What if it was already too late? What if Tiffany had turned Grandma June so completely that no amount of proof could bring her back? I whispered it into my empty living room, the words falling like stones. What if I've already lost her? I'd barely slept when my doorbell rang the next morning. Ellen stood there clutching Grandma June's old flip phone. Her face lit up like she'd found buried treasure. "You need to hear this," she said, brushing past me into the kitchen. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the phone's buttons. I was cleaning out June's bedside drawer, organizing her things, when I found this stuffed way in the back. You know those moments when your whole world shifts on its axis? This was one of them. "Listen," Ellen said, holding up the phone. The recording crackled to life, and Tiffany's voice filled my kitchen. "Just sign here, Grandma, and here. No, don't read it. We explained everything already. Blake, show her where the next one goes." "But shouldn't Megan—" Grandma June's voice sounded small, confused. "She doesn't need to know," Blake cut in smoothly. "Remember what we discussed? This is to protect you from her trying to take control." "That's right," Tiffany added. "You don't want to end up in a home, do you? Just a few more signatures." The recording ended. My coffee mug hit the counter so hard I'm surprised it didn't shatter. All this time, they'd been coaching her, manipulating her, using her fears against her. And now I had proof. Actual, undeniable proof in their own voices. I had to swallow to get my voice working. When was this recorded? 3 months ago, according to the timestamp. Ellen's eyes were fierce. Before they started changing, everything. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair, my legs suddenly weak with relief and rage all mixed together. The relief was like breaking surface after nearly drowning, that gorgeous first gulp of air. But the rage? That was deeper, colder. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd exploited an elderly woman's trust and fears to do it. "The birthday party," I said suddenly. "That's where this needs to happen." Ellen raised an eyebrow. "You mean—" "They're planning to announce their new guardianship there, right? In front of everyone?" I could see it all coming together. That's perfect. Let them think they're safe. Let them stand up there, smiling, thinking they've won. And then what? "You'll play this recording?" I got up and started pacing. "Yes, but it has to be—" I stopped, remembering something. That big frame I bought for Grandma's birthday photos, the one I was going to fill with family pictures? The collage frame? What about it? It's deep enough to hide a small speaker, one of those tiny Bluetooth ones. My mind was racing ahead now, plotting angles and timing. "I'll give it to her as a gift, set it up where everyone can see it, and when Tiffany makes her big announcement—" Ellen's eyes widened. Their own words, in front of all their witnesses. Exactly. I went to my craft room and pulled out the frame. It was perfect, wide maple borders with plenty of depth. The speaker would fit easily behind the backing board. No arguing, no accusations from me, just their voices telling the truth. I spent the next hour practicing my poker face in the mirror while Ellen helped me arrange photos in the frame. Happy memories of Grandma June through the years. Her 70th birthday, Christmas mornings, summer barbecues, the speaker nestled invisibly behind them all. "You'll need to look completely neutral when you walk in," Ellen advised. "Don't give them any hint." I nodded, rehearsing my breathing. Slow inhale, slower exhale. Keep my face relaxed, my hands steady. I had one shot at this. I couldn't telegraph my intentions. The birthday was 4 days away. I tested the speaker setup obsessively, making sure the audio was clear and would carry across a room. Ellen transferred the recording to my phone and helped me practice the timing until it felt natural. Now I stood holding the finished frame, everything ready. The photos smiled up at me, all those memories of better days. The speaker waited silently behind them, loaded with truth like a time bomb. But something gnawed at my gut. What if, even with the recording, they still found a way to twist it? What if the family chose Tiffany's smooth lies over reality? What if I played their own damning words and people just shrugged? I pulled up to the lake house on Grandma's birthday, wearing what I'd chosen with careful purpose. A simple navy dress and pearl earrings Mom had left me. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed drama queen like Tiffany would have loved to paint me as. You learn a few things about strategy when you've spent years managing care schedules and medication times. Sometimes the smartest move is the quietest one. My hands were steady holding that framed collage as I walked in, even though my heart was doing jumping jacks. You know that feeling when you're carrying something that could change everything? Like that. The photos I'd chosen showed our real history. Grandma June teaching me to bake snickerdoodles, the two of us feeding ducks at the park, simple moments that told the truth without saying a word. The moment I stepped inside, Tiffany's head snapped up like a cobra spotting prey. Her champagne glass froze halfway to her lips, and that megawatt smile of hers tightened into something more like a warning sign. Real subtle, cuz. Real subtle. Well, isn't this a surprise? She practically purred. But her eyes said, "Get out." Blake materialized behind her shoulder, right on cue, staring at my gift frame like it might be hiding a bomb. In a way, I guess it was. Remember those old westerns where everyone in the saloon goes quiet when trouble walks in? The room didn't exactly hush, but I felt the ripple. Sideways glances, whispers behind hands, the whole 9 yards. Amazing how fast people can make you feel like an intruder in your own family. Grandma June sat in her usual spot by the window, looking smaller somehow. Tired. The sight of her strain made my throat tight, but it also strengthened my resolve. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protection. I caught Ellen's eye across the room as she adjusted Grandma's shawl. Just the tiniest nod, but it was enough. The plan was still good. The recording was ready. All I needed now was patience. "Happy birthday, Grandma," I said softly, moving toward the center of the room. Not too fast, not too eager. Just a dutiful granddaughter with a gift, nothing more. I could feel Tiffany's laser focus on my every move. The frame felt heavier now, knowing what was hidden inside. But I'd checked the speaker 3 times that morning. It was synced and ready, tucked behind the matting where no one would think to look. Sometimes the best hiding place is right in plain sight. You could tell the exact moment Tiffany decided to take control of the situation. She clinked her glass with that same theatrical flair she'd used since we were kids putting on backyard plays. Some things never change. Everyone, please." She raised her voice just enough to command attention without seeming shrill. Always the performer, our Tiffany. "I'd like to make a toast to our beloved Grandma June." My fingers found the tiny control button through the frame's backing. One press would change everything. The room settled into attentive silence as Tiffany launched into what had to be a carefully rehearsed speech. "Grandma has always known what's best for this family," she started, all honey and warmth. Her wisdom, her guidance, and now, as we prepare to take on a more formal role in her care. My pulse thudded in my ears. The moment was here. One small movement would expose every lie, every manipulation. But once I hit that button, there'd be no taking it back, no reset button, no second chances. I looked at Grandma June's face, confused, tired, but still there. Still the woman who taught me that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always right. I thought about all those nights she'd stayed up with me after Mom died, teaching me to be strong without being cruel. Tiffany's voice rose with practiced emotion. So as we move forward with these new arrangements, my finger hovered over the button. 3 years of receipts. Countless nights of worry. One single recording that would shatter their whole charade. In that frozen moment, I swear I could smell Grandma's snickerdoodles baking, hear her humming while she worked in her garden, all the real memories they were trying to steal. I took a deep breath and held it. Sometimes justice comes down to a single heartbeat of courage. I took a slow breath and pressed the hidden button just as Tiffany reached the peak of her self-congratulatory toast. Her recorded voice filled the room with crystal clarity. "Just sign, Grandma. She doesn't need to know." You ever see one of those moments where time seems to freeze, where everyone's holding the same breath, processing the same shock? That's what happened when Tiffany's own words echoed off the walls. The recording continued, each word dropping like a hammer. Right there at the bottom. Don't worry about reading it. Blake and I will take care of everything. Tiffany's champagne glass stopped halfway to her lips. Her face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint. But she tried. God love her, she tried to laugh it off. "Oh, that's clearly been edited," she said, her voice climbing an octave. "Someone's trying to—" The recording kept playing. "Once you sign this, we can move everything into our names. Megan won't be able to touch a dime." Blake's voice chimed in. "It's better this way, Grandma. Trust us." I watched my cousin's perfect facade crack right down the middle. Blake started edging toward the door like a man looking for the nearest fire escape. But it was Grandma June's face that hit me hardest. The confusion in her eyes melted into something raw and wounded as she finally understood what they'd done. That's quite enough. A man in a sharp gray suit, the lawyer they'd invited to witness their grand guardianship announcement, stepped forward. His voice cut through the stunned silence. "There will be no legal proceedings today. Any existing documentation needs immediate review for potential fraud." Tiffany whirled on me, her designer dress swishing like a snake's warning. "You manipulative little—" She jabbed a finger toward my chest. "You edited that recording. You're trying to poison Grandma against us." I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was racing. "That audio came straight from Grandma's phone, Tiffany. Unedited, time-stamped. Ellen found it." Ellen stepped forward, her nurse's uniform crisp and professional. "I can confirm that. It was saved in Mrs. Delaney's personal device, dated 3 weeks ago." The room erupted in whispers. I saw my aunts exchanging looks, finally seeing through Tiffany's lies about stolen jewelry and nursing home threats. One of them covered her mouth, eyes wide with dismay. "This is ridiculous," Tiffany's voice cracked. "We were helping Grandma protect her assets. Megan's been—" "The only thing I've been doing," I cut in, "is keeping every receipt, every bank statement, and every care invoice for the past 5 years. Would you like me to share those too?" The lawyer cleared his throat. "I believe we need to schedule a formal review, immediately." He turned to Grandma June. "Mrs. Delaney, I strongly advise you not to sign anything until we've done a complete audit." Tiffany's perfect makeup couldn't hide the twitching muscle in her jaw. She looked around the room, searching for allies, but found only stunned faces and averted eyes. Even Blake had backed himself into a corner, looking like he might be sick. I watched my cousin's control shatter in real time. The woman who'd handed me that cruel note at the lake house, who'd spread lies about me through the family, who'd tried to steal not just money, but my place in Grandma's life. She stood there speechless, caught in her own words. Then Tiffany's eyes narrowed, and I saw something desperate spark behind them. She drew herself up, smoothing her dress with shaking hands, and I recognized that look. It was the same expression she'd worn as a teenager when caught in a lie, right before she invented an even bigger one to cover her tracks. I wondered what she'd try next. Would she attack my character again? Create some new accusation? Or would she finally do what she'd never done in her life? Tell the truth. The week after Grandma June's birthday hit me like aftershocks. I spent hours at my kitchen table, organizing paperwork into timeline folders while my coffee went cold. You know that hollow feeling when you're right, but wish you weren't? That's where I lived. Ellen came by, daily, steady as always. "Keep it clean," she'd remind me, tapping the growing stack of documents. "This isn't about revenge, it's about protection." Her words anchored me when my hands wanted to shake. I remember the first morning Grandma June agreed to see me again. The familiar scent of her powder and hand lotion brought back every Sunday morning I'd helped with her medications. Her eyes were red-rimmed when she reached for my hand. "I should have known better, honey," she whispered. "Should have remembered who really showed up all those years." My throat closed up. "It's okay, Grandma. We're okay." Truth is, those 4 words probably saved my sanity, because watching Tiffany's world crumble wasn't as satisfying as I'd imagined. It was just sad. Their family lifestyle brand sponsors started pulling out within days. Funny how fast companies distance themselves when elder exploitation hits the headlines, isn't it? Blake disappeared from social media first. Then Tiffany's perfectly curated posts turned desperate. All lies and family betrayal. But the evidence spoke louder than her caps lock. The bank statements didn't lie. The signatures didn't match. And that recording, her own voice coaching Grandma, well, that was pretty hard to explain away. The lawyer who'd been at the birthday party wasn't playing around. He filed reports, contacted authorities, started the whole legal avalanche. I watched Tiffany's Instagram followers drop by thousands. Her speaking engagements vanished. The family business that had funded their lake house lifestyle dried up faster than spilled champagne. One rainy Tuesday, Ellen brought me the news I'd been holding my breath for. Grandma June had reinstated her original will. Just like that, the papers that had started this whole mess were void. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair, remembering all those nights I'd wondered if anyone would ever see the truth. "You did good, Megan," Ellen said, squeezing my shoulder. "You did it the right way." But there was one piece of the past I couldn't let go of. The porch swing, where Grandma June used to tell me stories about Mom, where we'd watch fireflies and share ice cream on summer nights. With the lake house headed for auction, that swing, our swing, could end up anywhere. I found myself driving past the lake house one evening, seeing the auction pending sign like a countdown clock. The swing still hung there, probably the last thing Tiffany cared about right now. But to me, that worn wood held every good memory I had of belonging. "We're having an estate sale first," Ellen told me over coffee the next morning, "before the house auction, this weekend." I nodded, my fingers tight around my mug. "I'll be there." "For the swing?" She knew me too well. "For the swing," I agreed. Some things shouldn't get lost in the shuffle. Legal papers could prove what happened. Bank statements could show the theft. But that swing? That was the heart of everything I'd been fighting for. Not money, not revenge. Just the simple truth that love leaves marks you can touch. And I wasn't about to let anyone auction that away. I sat in my kitchen those next few weeks, watching karma unfold like a slow-motion avalanche. Every morning brought fresh news of Tiffany and Blake's world crumbling, piece by carefully constructed piece. You know that saying about revenge being a dish best served cold? Well, this was more like watching them choke on their own recipe. The charges for elder exploitation hit them hard. I'd gathered those receipts and bank statements like breadcrumbs, and now they led straight to a future neither of them had planned for. Their fancy lawyer, the one who'd always smooth things over at family gatherings, couldn't spin forged signatures into misunderstandings. "Did you hear?" Ellen called one morning. 3 more sponsors pulled out of their business." I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Those high-end boutiques and lifestyle brands that Tiffany had courted, they were running like rats from a sinking ship. Turns out, exploiting your elderly grandmother isn't great for the image they were trying to project. Remember that lake house where they'd humiliated me? The one with its perfect view and magazine-worthy decor? It went up for auction faster than Tiffany could post one of her fake-happy social media updates. The same spotlight she'd used to shame me was now burning her world to the ground. But here's what really got me. Watching, Grandma June signed that reinstated will. Her hands were steady that day, steadier than I'd seen in months. Maybe it was because the weight of their manipulation had lifted. She looked me right in the eye as she finished her signature, and I saw my grandmother again, not their puppet. "I'm sorry, Megan," she'd whispered. The words were simple, but they filled every crack their cruelty had left in my heart. I didn't need to beg for my place back. Didn't need to prove anything. Truth has a way of speaking for itself when you give it the right moment to be heard. When I heard about the auction, I knew exactly what I wanted. Not the designer furniture or the art pieces Tiffany had collected like trading cards. Just one thing, that old porch swing where Grandma June and I used to sit, sharing stories and watching sunsets. You should have seen Tiffany's face when I walked into that auction. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide how the stress had aged her. Blake stood in the corner, shoulders hunched, looking more like a scared kid than the smug partner in crime he'd been. The bidding started low. Nobody else knew what that swing meant. The familiar creak of its chains echoed in my memory as I raised my number, daring anyone to challenge me. Nobody did. I brought it home that same day. There was this maple tree in my yard. One Grandma June had planted when I was just a kid. I remember her telling me, "This tree will grow with you, honey." Now it was tall and strong. Its branches spread wide like welcoming arms. That's where I hung the swing, right beneath those maple leaves. The same leaves that had shaded us during countless summer conversations now filtered sunlight onto worn wood that held so many memories. The first time I sat on it at my house, that familiar creak almost brought tears to my eyes. But they weren't sad tears, more like my body finally accepting it was safe again. The gentle sway felt like coming home, like every double shift and careful receipt-keeping had led to this moment of quiet victory. Looking up through those maple leaves, watching them dance in the breeze, I finally understood why my revenge had worked so perfectly. I hadn't needed to scream or scheme or sink to their level. The truth had done all the heavy lifting. I'd just given it the right stage. I let my hand rest on the swing's smooth arm, worn down by years of palms just like mine, and whispered what I'd known all along. Real love never needs signatures.